Okay, we are 30 participants online. In the interest of time, I think I will start. So good afternoon and from Rome, and good morning and good evening to all colleagues that are connecting from other time zones. My name is Renata Mirulla. I'm one of the coordinators of the National Evaluation Capacity Development Working Group of UNEG, along with Ada Ocampo here present today also. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this EPE session that's part of the initiative of the Working Group of National Evaluation Capacity Development. And the title of our session is National Evaluation Capacity Development in Turbulent Times, Supporting Countries to Achieve the SDGs. What do we aim with this session? I think we aim for several goals. First of all, opening a dialogue on why national evaluation capacity development is important and why it is important for UNEG to support this important area of work. Second, also to present what some of the UNEG members have been doing over these last years in terms of national evaluation capacities and the challenges and the lessons they have learned. And also we are in difficult times, as the title of our session says, we all know very well. So the context of the current pandemic poses new challenges and to national evaluation capacities, but it also opens opportunities for moving even more strongly in this area, as we will see. You may all recall that there was a General Assembly resolution some years ago, in 2014 exactly, calling for UNEG, for UN entities to support countries in developing capacities for evaluation. That was some time ago, and it's time for UNEG also to show what progress has been made. And this is one of the tasks of our working group this year, which we are starting to develop work on. So responding to that resolution some years ago was already done. So I think this session will also bring us some food for thought also for the work of this, the National Evaluation Capacity Working Group. And before going into the details of our agenda and what we will discuss today, as it is usual in these meetings, I will just go through some quick tech tips. So Thomas, if you could go to the second slide, yes. We all know, and we are all experts, I think, at this point with using and participating in virtual events. But as usual, we will use the chat for your questions, on your comments. But you are also welcome to, if you wish to speak, to unmute yourself, raise your hand and unmute yourself. On the second slide, I think it shows this. Thomas, you can go to the second slide of this tech tips, housekeeping matters. So yes, you are welcome to also intervene. We have some time also for comments and questions from our colleagues. Back to our session. Let's see how the session is organized today and the flow of our agenda. So next slide, Thomas. Okay. After this brief welcome, we have a keynote presentation by Robert Lai. He will introduce us to the topic of the national evaluation capacities in this context and on possible ways ahead for UNEG. We have some time for questions and answers, and then we have a second part of our session, which is organized as a World Cafe. So we have three colleagues from our group that will present their initiatives from their agencies, and participants, you will be split in three groups randomly. And in each group, you will have the chance to listen to 2 out of 3 presentations. In the interest of time, you will be randomly listening to 2 of these presentations. And then when we go back to the plenary, we will have time to see what are the main takeaways from each of these three experiences of the three agencies presenting, and some more questions and answer, hopefully, and discussion. And that will be it for our session. So let me now introduce our guest and keynote speaker, Rob Lahi. So next slide, I think we have his bio. I think it's worth mentioning, many of you may know Rob already. He's quite well known in the evaluation community. But as far as UNEG is concerned, he also worked with UNEG quite a lot. He worked on the report on national evaluation capacities and tips for supporting national evaluation capacities some years ago. I think it was in 2012. He also worked with the SDG group and in developing the inventory of SDGs initiatives supported by the evaluation offices of the UNEG. And he also recently developed the evaluability diagnostic tool for the UN cooperation framework. So Rob will share his opening remarks on country-led support for national evaluation capacity development in the COVID-19 era, repositioning in face of a changing context. So I leave the floor to Rob, and I thank him again for being our guest and accepting to do this opening keynote presentation for us today. Thanks, Rob. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Renata. I guess we'll go, there we go. Let's go to the next slide. But I congratulate UNEG and the working group, the NECD working group, because I think this is a particularly important topic. It has been in the past, and I think COVID has generated new issues, in some sense new opportunities, but it clearly is a changing context. I have but 10 minutes, so let me move through this quickly. This is just basically what I was hoping to say. I'm starting with just a few words in terms of a framework that is UNEG has this framework. It's, I think, important in terms of trying to understand the country context and where the gaps might be. But I also want to talk then about the changing landscape, how COVID has impacted in very broad terms, and what this might mean in terms of identifying efforts that UN agencies and UNEG in particular might take upon themselves. So let's just move to Thomas, to the next slide. So the framework really, what it is trying to do is to say that if one is developing a national evaluation system or a national monitoring and evaluation system, we're looking at issues, political issues as well as technical issues. Focus often is on the capacity to supply monitoring and evaluation information, but indeed the whole system requires much more than that. And so the four building blocks that have been identified here, the vision of leadership and enabling environment, and then on the technical side, capacity to supply and capacity to demand and use M&E information. And this latter one is often one that gets overlooked. But this framework, or any framework that tries to capture this broad sense, can be particularly useful in making some judgments about country context. It's not one size fits all, but where will NECD efforts really gain the most traction? Where are the gaps in the future and moving ahead for particular countries? So let's just move to the next one. In terms of I guess saying where are we, the big we, in terms of progress on building national evaluation capacity. Clearly there have been gains. 2015 was the year of International Year of Evaluation. Much more profile being given. There's a growth of VOPEs, the networking events, considerable number of networking events. But the reality is there's still limited country-led evaluation. And country-led evaluation is particularly important within the scheme of things of measuring and understanding SDG progress. And so NECD efforts are particularly important, but the context has changed. We all know that. COVID has really put a focus on immediate priorities: health, food, shelter, safety, stability. And in that sense, longer term goals and the targets really are of lesser importance at this point for, I would say, every country in the world. There's varying degrees of upheaval. There's impacts that are going to be felt in the short, the medium, and the longer term. And it's not just health. Economic, social, political impacts are really going to be with us for quite some time. And how long and the nature of those impacts, there's great uncertainty. So at a country level, we'll just move to the next slide. At a country level, the importance of understanding what the impact might be on various groups in society is going to be particularly important, in part to see whether or not there's fallback in terms of the most vulnerable or various other groups, and in terms of trying to assess an appropriate response for the way ahead. The global impact of all of this is that it may result in a lessening of the reach of the SDGs. And quite frankly, I think even pre-COVID, my sense is we were starting to see a lessening of the reach of the SDGs. But the added element that we have here as a resource one, and that a mounting global fiscal crisis threatens the funding for NECD efforts. So the importance now, the next slide, the importance then in terms of the UN and UNEG efforts to support NECD. Well, the UN and UNEG in particular are well positioned. I think a key will be funding of capacity building, whether that's the resources or whether that's expertise, and advocacy for evaluation use in government decision making. I see questions are coming in already, so we'll take those at the end. Advocacy becomes important because I guess I would say good evaluation at a country level is not sufficient. Really, that's not the end game. The end game is the use of evaluation in government decision-making, governance, etc. So how do we get the attention? How does one get the attention of officials to think of and embrace evaluation? In the COVID times, it's probably positioning evaluation in a more modest and I'll say practical terms. And the reason I use the word practical is that where we have been increasingly seeing the term transformative being applied to evaluation. In theory, yes, evaluation is transformative, but the realities of COVID and the realities within country is that it probably needs an approach that is going to be, shall we say, nimble, and I've used the term clever in addressing issues and devising solutions. The notion, for example, evaluation serving as a tool for learning, helping identify where change or improvements may be needed, or how well particular pandemic responses initiatives are performing. Individual countries, probably many individual countries, have likely have a patchwork of responses. How well is this performing? One might even address issues of value and value for money. But one of the realities is that with the global fiscal crunch, individual UN agencies themselves may be facing their own challenges in finding adequate resources to support country-level NECD. So pooling efforts of UN agencies and the notion of UNEG, the UNEG forum, it can be useful here. This isn't a new concept, but it involves more than sharing information or communication. It is really speaking to coordination. And the last bullet on this slide speaks to UN reform efforts and the implicit assumption that in the UN cooperation frameworks that agencies are working together in support of country needs and the SDGs. Here again, I would say the UNEG Forum can be particularly useful. So Thomas, could we just flip to the next slide? So this is not a comprehensive listing. This is a set of ideas. And I think the takeaway here is that the intent here is support for a country to be developing its own evaluation or monitoring and evaluation capability. And that will be unique to every country. So the approach is going to be and needs to be tailored, but in general terms, a UN or UNEG set of support efforts can be focused around guidance. It can be focused around mentoring. It can be focused around advising. But the words I've used here are the practical elements of actually using evaluation. And it's one of the gaps as one talks to people at a country level who have been taking training and workshops, etc. In many cases, they have never actually carried out evaluations. And so I've also added the word mentoring in terms of advising and assisting in the planning, the conduct, the follow-up, all of those terms, but in the context of actual and real needs. So modest evaluation that address questions that need answers. I've also, in the last bullet on this slide, talk about the joint efforts in devising appropriate training, orientation packages, and approaches for different audiences. Across different UN agencies, there's a wide variety of training materials, and it can be useful, I think, to support one another in terms of devising training materials that are going to work well. I have, in my mind, some of that training and orientation can also be directed towards regional evaluation specialists within UN agencies and country level M&E focal points. And I say this because really, as I have talked to worked with different UN agencies, it can be quite uneven across agencies or even within one agency in terms of the capabilities at a regional or country level. With UN reform, there's an expectation that the regional levels are playing and country levels are playing a larger role. So that, I would say, shouldn't be overlooked. My last slide here is really, I'll move to the next one, just because I only had 10 minutes here, I wanted to identify some references. And the first reference is the one that Renata had mentioned. I reread that 2012 document and yesterday, and my sense is it's still very relevant in today's world. The other references are other work I have done from a country level, so very practical elements associated with it. Finally, now the last slide, my coordinates. I have to, after the Q&A for this presentation, I have to leave the World Cafe, unfortunately, because I'm actually in the middle of another meeting. So I've left my my coordinates, and I have said to Renata and Ada that if there are follow-up questions, if anyone wants to get in touch with me with any questions or concerns or comments, by all means, you have my coordinates here. So I'll stop at that point.
Thank you very much, Rob. You raised many important questions and issues, and I see in the chat there are also a few questions to respond, so I'll go on that directly in the interest of time. There's a first clarifying question by Sri Lata on what do you mean by the reach of the SDG? It was referenced in one of your first slides. Yes, so perhaps you can clarify that.
Yeah, what I was trying to refer to there was the broad range of SDGs, the focus at a country level is countries are identifying their priorities, and their priorities we were seeing don't necessarily represent the full, and I'll use the word reach again, of all SDGs. In the context of COVID, where the focus becomes immediate needs, immediate priorities, probably health, the areas I've mentioned, health, food, shelter, safety, are probably those areas that become the priorities. The other thing that I think that relates to this is that there is clearly some fallback in terms of those who are the most disadvantaged, fallback in terms of well-being, and so if UN agencies or UNEG are thinking of the full scope of the SDGs and Agenda 2030, there's every likelihood that if we are thinking of the global impact, that there's going to be, I think, a narrowing of scope in some areas. That would be my sense.
Thank you. So there is a question also by Oscar Garcia. Did you see any country demanding support to strengthen national evaluation capacities after COVID? And this may be also a question for other colleagues here, but first of all for you.
Yes, so the question is, are any countries asking for this, for support?
Yes. Demanding support to strengthen national evaluation capacity development after the COVID. So in this context. Well,
are they asking for it? Are they demanding it? I think that's an interesting way to put it. I wouldn't put it that way. I would say the dialogue. There's dialogue around SDGs, there's dialogue around national planning, and I think the importance is that the UN and UNEG are well positioned to be part of that dialogue in discussing the importance of evaluation to the benefit of the individual countries. So I do believe that's an exchange that needs to happen. I think if evaluation is perceived to be primarily about accountability, as it is sometimes, and and equated with notions of audit, then political leadership probably doesn't demand it. But if it's brought into a broader context, as I was trying to describe, and this is the importance, I think, of how in that dialogue, the reality of the COVID crisis, I think, has to be put squarely as part of that dialogue, and how evaluation can be supportive of both in the short term, the medium term, and eventually in the longer term. So it's in my mind, it's recognizing the current realities and the context and building that into the dialogue. So UN agencies and UNEG standing back and saying, well, what we said last year, we're going to have to actually change the narrative.
Thanks, Rob. There are other few questions. There's a question from Andrew that also may be also directed to other colleagues on what experiences do colleagues have in inviting national government counterparts to participate in evaluation exercises and particularly country missions. What are some of the pros and cons in doing so? In case we can also have some of these questions discussed in the last part, but if you want to address this, if you have any experience to share, Rob.
Sure. I think that it's the notion and the point I'm trying to raise here is almost the demonstration of the utility and the uses of evaluation, where from a broad perspective, when we talk, we as evaluators can understand how evaluation can be used. That doesn't always get communicated all that well. Some relatively modest evaluation can of addressing questions, and I say questions of real need, can be useful. I think they can be useful from many perspectives, not only as a demonstration of the usefulness of evaluation or the varying uses of evaluation, but also in the context of mentoring people who ultimately, as I say, if this is going to be a country-owned national evaluation or national monitoring and evaluation system, people are going to have to gain experience. And so I think there's a learning aspect in terms of the mentoring. That's why I've placed it here. I've had some examples myself in terms of working with individual countries and working on particular projects where, quite frankly, anytime I have had a project, I always raise the notion of local evaluators being a part of a team from the learning perspective. But the questioner might have, I think, as you said, Renata, this may be something that as you go through the later part of the day, there will be some experiences and there may be some pros and cons. My last comment would be, I wouldn't let the notion of independence get in the way of this.
Okay, thanks, Rob. There are a few more questions. One, perhaps we can go through them quickly in the interest of time, but then also have the discussion at the end. One is from Maria Novkovic. The comment to support evaluation which respond to real need that you defined as modest, nimble, etc. How do you square this with the previous direction of investing in strategic system-wide evaluation? So is this, how do you put them together, like on the one side? more
I,
modest?
I don't see them opposing. I think the notion of trying to develop evaluation capacity is trying to ensure that you have an effective and sustainable, and I use the word system, as an engineer might use it, as opposed to how an IT specialist might use it. So if you have the capability, and again, two key words, effective and sustainable, then part of moving in that direction is to actually be able to be able to carry out those evaluations. So you carry it out, and I made reference to the planning, the conduct, and the follow-up, and ultimately the use, and trying to ensure that you have appropriate forum to table information, to discuss. And so all of those elements are around the actual mechanics of carrying out and using evaluation. My reference to a real need is probably, as much as anything, trying to ensure that the senior officials in a country have been consulted, because again, part of this is a demonstration and in effect advocacy and buy-in to the importance and use of evaluation. So if it's a hypothetical high-level evaluation that gets carried out that has perhaps less meaning to, in particular, the current situation, then it may be deemed to be a nice to have, but not a need to have. It may be deemed to be academic. And the intent here is not to leave that impression, but to be able to point to this as something that's doable and actually starts answering some questions and serving a real immediate purpose.
Okay, we are running out of time, but just a last comment. There are a couple of questions on the financial aspect, like in this time, you also mentioned this in the presentation, in view of budget constraints, what are good practices that the UN could take, and do you think that the UN will jump on, let's say, supporting and strengthening national evaluation capacity development? These are questions by, I hope I interpreted them well, by Ivan and from WFP and Suzanne from UN Habitat. If you could just comment, and then I think we have to pass to the second part of this.
Well, you know, will the UN support this, jump on it? On the one hand, UN reform initiatives and the UN SDCF, basically, those are assumptions that are implicitly built in to the notion. So there's a reality check here, and I think I would take it back to basically your own masters and say, if we're going to do this, we need to. We can't just assume that a country has evaluation capacity. And if you do indeed want to be able to learn about the SDGs and the performance and progress being made, relying simply on some global indicators is not going to cut it. And so I think UNEG can quite frankly make strong statements to this effect. You know, UNEG as a forum, you have hopefully a common voice on this, or at least some common elements. But within individual UN agencies, the notion of evaluators speaking truth to power, well, I think here's a perfect example.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Rob. This is a good way to conclude your intervention. Okay. And thank you so much for being with us and making yourself available also for responding to further other questions that may come up. We really appreciate this.
Well, thank you. And I'm sorry I cannot be here for the rest of the session, but as our Australian friends might say, good on you for holding such a session, and enjoy and best of luck with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, colleagues, thanks so much for being with us today again. And we go now to the second part of our session, which is in a World Cafe format. We have three colleagues of our National Evaluation Capacity Development Working Group that are here today to share their experiences from their agencies on what they have been doing in this area so far and their challenges and lessons learned. So let me just briefly introduce them. Ada Ocampo, she is co-coordinator of the working group, and this year we also have a third co-coordinator who's Heather from UNDP, by the way. But Ada, many of you may know her. She is a senior evaluation officer at UNICEF, and she is vice chair of Eval SDGs. She will present the experiences and lessons on national evaluation capacity development from the UNICEF perspective. Then we have Carlos Asenjo. He is evaluation officer and National Evaluation Capacity Development focal point at UNODC. And he will present a NECD partnership experience developed with Morocco, involving many stakeholders. It's a very interesting experience. And then we have our third colleague, Patricia Vidal from the ILO. She's evaluation officer and involved in a wide range of activities in ILO, including national evaluation capacity development. And she will present the ILO experience on supporting national evaluation capacity development for the ILO constituents and practical lessons learned. So as I mentioned, now Thomas, who's supporting us technically, will divide participants randomly in three groups, and we'll have the pleasure to listen to our colleagues' presentations, to two of them. They will rotate among the groups. So now Thomas will divide us, and we'll get back to the plenary after slightly more than half an hour. We'll have 16, 17 minutes for each presentation. See you later in the plenary.
Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. It's my pleasure to be with you. Let's wait for just a couple of seconds for others to join. As it has been mentioned, I will be presenting the experience of UNICEF on national evaluation capacity development, and we will touch a bit on what we are doing in these turbulent times, despite of the challenges. And based on my experience, while others join, I will just say that we should actually analyze more our assumption that we cannot do much because of these COVID times. Probably that's our perspective, but we have to bring on board the perspective of other stakeholders that might not be thinking exactly and might be demanding even more support from the field. Okay, I think it's time to go. Let me share my screen. I will go for about 10 minutes and we'll have 7 minutes for questions and answers. And if there are questions that are still pending, we will have 10 minutes in plenary to go through them. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, are you able to see my screen? Yes, can somebody give me a sign that you are able to see my screen?
Yes, thanks, Ada.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, the title is National Evaluation Capacities Development, Experiences and Lessons from a UNICEF Perspective. And basically, I would like to start with a saying that says, it's actually a Tibetan saying that says, once you have reached the top of the mountain, keep on climbing. I chose this saying because it's actually true for us. Evaluation has always been challenging, has always presented challenges. We always face complex questions, and we feel that every time there is a paradigm shift, there is a crisis that in the context, the questions become more complex and complex. But anyway, throughout, questions have been complex and should have been complex if they have not been. We always have short time frames for evaluations. We have limited budgets, and we can say now we are facing serious challenges in budgets, but probably that has been the case in the past as well, in many, many occasions. We have ethical imperatives that many, many times are difficult actually to implement, to really make our evaluations underpinned by these ethical principles. We have diverse uses and stakeholders, political drivers and political decisions, and turbulent contexts. So important to mention that we have always worked under these challenges. These challenges may shape, inform a little bit as time passes, but we have always faced these challenges. So this is a call for us as evaluators to embrace these challenges with professionalism, with seriousness, and to keep on climbing. The main challenges we have faced in the last few years poses as well several opportunities for us. One is the 2030 agenda that in the follow-up of review processes, establish a legal framework, not a legal framework, an important framework, global framework for country-led evaluations and evidence-based SDG reporting. It's important that we have this chapter established in the agenda that allows us to move ahead with countries in supporting them to reporting their progress towards the SDGs with an evidence-based focus. And it also calls for disaggregation, data disaggregated and country-led evaluations. And the United Nations has the mandate of supporting countries for doing the follow-up and review processes. We are also in COVID times. So we not only have the 2030 agenda with 17 goals and 169 targets that poses several challenges, but at the same time, the opportunities of country-led evaluations and evidence-based reporting, but we also have the COVID times. And the COVID times is not only posing the challenges of making or shifting from face-to-face to virtual, as we see in the picture. Of course, that's a main challenge as well and implies a lot of work. But probably the main challenge is to help countries in the acceleration process of their SDGs. The SDGs are at risk, and in the next high-level political forum, not only in the next, but in the next 3 years, the main topic is going to be acceleration. And therefore, we have the commitment, hopefully the commitment, but the obligation to help countries accelerate the SDGs. Evaluation can play an important role in addressing acceleration. We are more than ever in this crisis committed or obligated to underpin our activities with the principle of no one left behind, do our evaluations with environment, equity, equality lens, and also we have the overall opportunity as a function to demonstrate that the evaluation can actually evolve and adapt. Adaptive management is a concept that we have to embrace. There were questions in the previous presentation about doing other types of evaluations. Exactly, I think most of you have heard about experiences of embedding rapid evaluations, synthesis, evaluation synthesis, evaluative workshops, etc. And and embracing adaptive management while doing that. Going to the experience of UNICEF, with the national evaluation capacity development, it's at the core of the agenda, and it's in our UNICEF evaluation policy, as you can see here. So this is a quote extracted from our evaluation policy, and it clearly states that national evaluation capacity development will help the attainment of the SDGs and the fulfillment of the rights of the children. Among the key initiatives that we are doing, and we have been doing, and we continue doing, is support national efforts towards enabling environment for evaluations. It means supporting countries to establish national evaluation systems, national evaluation policies. There has also been a question whether there is demand for that. Yes, there is. Not massive demand. We never have had massive demand, but the demand is there and is in some cases growing. Promote country-led evaluations of the SDGs, support countries to embed evaluation in voluntary national reviews, and especially now support countries to accelerate progress towards the SDGs through evaluation. We believe that only through evaluation, whether it's rapid, it takes advantage of synthesis, etc., can provide the evidence country needs to inform how to go forward in a way that acceleration can happen. We also have training initiatives, knowledge products, and of course, we cannot do these things alone. We are very much engaged in global dialogue, especially in the high-level political forum, in the NEC conference, in other conferences, and also in advocacy activities that we think it's more important now than before. In working in partnerships, we have supported national efforts towards embedding environment, as I said before, especially with the Global Parliamentarians Forum for Evaluation and SDGs. Advocacy activities for country-led evaluations in partnership with EVAL SDGs, the Department of Evaluation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, and IIED. We have several activities with them, including a guidebook, and you can see the cover of the guidebook, Evaluation to Connect the SDGs with National Priorities, that it has been translated into French and Spanish as well, and it's publicly available. We have high-level political forum site events, briefing notes, and many others, and support to country-led evaluations that are citing 2 countries that have ongoing evaluations. We have an advisory role evaluation, 2 evaluations of the SDGs in Nigeria, in 1 in Peru. In partnership with UNEG and UNICEF Clear, we are supporting countries to embed evaluations in voluntary national reviews. And for that, we have, and supporting countries to prepare for country-led evaluations. We think that the training, technical assistance, and producing knowledge products on this area is actually an entry point for country-led evaluations. We have a guide for this that we have developed together with CLEAR, and you see it on the screen, and this has been translated into Portuguese, Spanish, French, in Spanish, French, and Portuguese. 4 languages altogether, together with English. We, as I mentioned before, we have had since 3 years back participation in site events to the high-level political forum, doing 2, 3, 5 sometimes with different partners. We never go alone with that. And events and conferences to advocate, webinar series together with EVAL SDGs. And we have some lessons now. We have to go a bit quick. We think that the UN to be aligned, it has to be aligned with the 2030 agenda, and that's a must, that we should go beyond technical dialogue, needing to emphasize the political dimension of evaluation and the evaluation of the SDGs. To take a decision to do a country-led evaluation or to embed evaluation in voluntary national reviews, it's a political decision with technical implications and not the other way around. Importance of coalitions and alliance and advocacy is paramount. So the very last lesson, because I will highlight, is that we need advocacy and we need to become advocates to position high in the agenda evaluation during these challenging times, because evaluation is to contribute to SDGs acceleration. I will stop there and wait for your comments. Thank you very much. Any comment, question? I think in the chat, let me see. You can feel free to use the mic as well. Sorry, I don't read it. I think we have one chat. What have been your experiences in overcoming the university of competing political priorities that may tempt to drive evaluation efforts towards short-term political agenda? Any lessons? Thank you very much, Theo, for this is important. When we talk about, I think we have to do, to combine both, not only trying to do evaluations and country-led, but ensuring an enabling environment for that. We see that in countries that they have a national evaluation policy like South Africa, Philippines, others, or that have embedded evaluation in their constitution like Cote d'Ivoire, or and establish a law like Nepal, then there are also entities within the government that deal with evaluation, and they have the commitment to push the agenda forward. And if this, in the case of Nigeria, for example, the Ministry of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation works closely with the SDG department that it's linked to the Office of the Presidency. Therefore, they're very high level, and that allows the possibility for internal dialogue and not to have, to position the possibility to position evaluation. Is there any other question? I would suggest that you just take the mic, open the mic and speak. No more questions? If there are no more questions, let me go back to my previous slide that I cut a little bit, that tells about the importance of rethinking the competencies of evaluators. Nowadays, we need evaluators with political competencies, because the discourse has to be beyond technical issues. Country-led evaluations need political decisions, and evaluators need to embed in political dialogues that will allow the decisions to implement the recommendations, decisions to undertake evaluation, country-led evaluations, etc. And it's also important to support countries to embed evaluation of the SDGs into national policies and development plans. There is always the question whether we can only do evaluability assessments. We can only do diagnostics because we are not sure our plans are aligned with the SDGs, therefore how to do an evaluation. So if the national plans are supposed to be, because how can we know, not aligned with the SDGs, shall we advise the government not to evaluate? Or should we advocate for evaluations that would shed light about the level of alignment of national plans and what needs to be adjusted? So those were the lessons I skipped. So I don't know whether there is a question, comment that you will like to raise. We have very few minutes left. Anyone that has a comment or would like to share his or her experience? Perhaps UN Women? How do we ensure the parliamentarians use evaluations? Well, there are various, before I give the floor to you and women, there are various experiences of parliamentarians. The Uganda Parliament has established an Office of Evaluation and Research to ensure the use. And we also have experience in Sri Lanka, another experience in Philippines. So we cannot talk that we have run a long way on this, but we have good practices that are shedding lights on how to do this. Yes, you and women, very quickly, we have 1 minute.
Hi, this is Chaitali from UN Women. Just a quick one there. We also have some experience where the demand to evaluate actually has come from our government counterparts. For instance, in Palestine, we are in conversation with the Ministry of Gender to look into the national strategy to end violence against women, to do an end-term evaluation and look into their current strategy before they move on to developing the next strategy to end violence against women. So sometimes there is good appetite and the demand actually comes from the government. What they need is the technical assistance. And I think Robert alluded in a very nice way, the advisory and the mentorship role. Sometimes the ministries are also comfortable earmarking resources. So basically the support that they reach out to the UN agencies is for the technical support. And it actually helps to create a good enabling environment for the country and other ministries that may not be necessarily involved in a particular thematic evaluation that we are conducting, such as, on violence against women, but it has a ripple effect on other ministries also to appreciate the use of evaluation and learn from it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, colleagues. You can remain in the room. I will have to leave to the next group, and the next presenter is coming to join you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, the title of the presentation is National Evaluation Capacity Development, Experience and Lessons from a UNICEF Perspective. I will go straight to that, starting by a saying, a Tibetan saying that says, once you have reached the top of the mountain, keep on climbing. The reason why I have chosen this saying is because evaluation is challenging. And every time there is a shift in the context, either there is a shift, a paradigm shift, or a crisis as the one we are facing, we feel that evaluation perhaps is not positioned enough. Perhaps it's not a priority. Perhaps we have to slow down. No, the message is once you have reached the top of the mountain, keep on climbing. The evaluation has always been challenging. We always have faced with complex questions. And if the questions have not been complex in the past, probably that was not the way to go. Evaluation questions have to be complex, have to address complex issues, have to address complexities. We always face short time frames, limited budgets, ethical imperatives, diverse users and stakeholders, political drivers and decisions. We hold the assumption that evaluation is a political as well as a technical exercise. And for national evaluation capacity development, there are political decisions to do evaluations, to do country-led evaluations, to establish a national evaluation system. And those decisions have technical implications, but not the other way around. And of course, we have turbulent contexts. One of the greatest challenges that we have faced a few years ago was the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that established 17 SDGs or 17 goals and 169 targets. There have been lots of discussions about how to go about this complexity and whether we can only do evaluability, we can do diagnostic, or we can move forward towards evaluation. But there was also an opportunity with the follow-up and review process that explicitly talks about the need to, for evidence-based reporting on the progress of the SDGs, national evaluation systems, and country-led evaluations. This is a huge opportunity for us, that it's established in a global framework that has been agreed upon governments, UN organizations, international development organizations, etc. So we are in COVID times that added to the challenges situation we were already facing. And COVID times not only has posed the challenge of shifting from face-to-face to virtual, that of course has done, but poses us the challenges and the opportunity to help accelerate the SDGs through evaluation. The forthcoming political forums will be, and high-level political forums will be about acceleration of the SDGs, and through evaluation we have the opportunity to help governments with the evidence they need to devise the ways towards accelerating the SDGs. More than before, we have to be aligned with the principle of no one left behind, and that's also an opportunity. Also embrace, do evaluations with an equity, equality, and environment lens. And we have the big opportunity to demonstrate, and we are lucky to be part of this movement, to demonstrate that evaluation can evolve and can adapt. And adaptive management is key for this. In the previous session, in the plenary, Robert was asked what type of evaluations, and nowadays you might have seen senior management of different organizations, banks, UN, talking about the need to embrace rapid evaluations, evaluative workshops, evaluation synthesis, taking advantage of evidence that already exists. Now we go to the UNICEF experience. We have that the evaluation policy explicitly mentions evaluation capacity development, and therefore for the SDGs and for the fulfillment of the rights of all children. And that's why evaluation capacity development and national evaluation capacity development are at the core of UNICEF's agenda. So the first lesson is that if evaluation is national evaluation is going to happen, it has to be institutionalized, or is better if it's institutionalized. Key initiatives, we have been supporting national efforts towards enabling environments for evaluation, promoting country-led evaluations of the SDGs, supporting countries to embed evaluations in voluntary national reviews. So we are currently supporting countries to accelerate progress towards the SDGs through evaluation, training, knowledge products, and of course, lots of advocacy through engagement in global dialogue, especially the high-level political forum, NEC conferences, other conferences. In doing this, we partner with the Global Parliamentarians Forum for Evaluation, EVAL SDGs, and for advocacy purposes, we mainly partner with EVAL SDGs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, and IIED. We have a partnership that is 3 years long so far, and we have done several webinars, side events to the high-level political forum, and we also have produced the guidebook that you see on the screen, that is Evaluation to Connect SDGs with National Priorities, that is available in English, Spanish, and French. And we are also supporting country-led evaluations that are currently ongoing in this crisis, 2 evaluations of the SDGs in Nigeria and 1 in Peru. In partnership with CLEAR, we are supporting countries to embed evaluation in voluntary national review. This is the 3rd consecutive year, now being done online. The support includes training, technical assistance, and knowledge product. We have a guide that you see on the screen. This is available in 4 languages, English, Spanish, Portuguese, French. And as I mentioned, we have done several side events with the high-level political forum, participated in conferences. We have a webinar series organized together with EVAL SDGs and other partners. So the lesson is that it's a must for the UN and UNEG to be aligned with the 2030 agenda. And here we're not talking only about the overall agenda, but especially with the follow-up and review processes that talks about country-led evaluations and national evaluation systems and evidence-based reporting. It's also important to go beyond the technical dialogue. We are used to be evaluators talking to evaluators, but we need to emphasize the political dimension of evaluation and the evaluation of the SDGs. And we need coalitions, alliances with parliamentarians, foundations, etc. And advocacy is paramount. I would like to highlight one final message here, which is that we need advocacy, but we also need advocates. And the message is that we should all become advocates if we are to position evaluation high in the agenda during these challenging times. Evaluation needs to contribute to SDGs acceleration, and we can do so. So I will stop there and wait for your comments. And this is a joint challenge, a joint opportunity. Let's walk the talk together. So over to you. Feel free to use the mic or to put in the chat. Any question, comment? No questions, no comments. It was too complicated, too clear, too unclear. So if there are no comments, probably I can, there's a comment there, really great presentation, thank you. I'm interested in the types of training that was made available at the national level to build capacity in evaluation. Love the first style, the quote. Thank you, Heather. Yes, the trainings we are doing now have changed a lot. That's a very good question. We are mainly focusing on, we have like a component that is more advocacy, like raising awareness on the importance to keep the momentum, the importance of evaluation for SDGs acceleration, and in practical terms, we have we are focusing our attention. In previous year, probably to compare, we were focusing on outcome evaluations, impact evaluations, I would say, quote, quote, traditional methodologies. This time, our focus is mainly on evaluation synthesis, that is mainly about taking advantage of previous evaluations that exists, not only of the government, of any organization, using databases and evaluation research reviews that exist, and doing an evaluation system synthesis based on that, training on rapid evaluations, and on evaluative workshops. We are doing this together with CLEAR, and we have some guidelines on those as well that are coming gradually available in Spanish, in English, and in French. So that is the focus that we are emphasizing now. Any other comment, question? If there are no more other comments or questions, I would like probably to call upon Heather to briefly tell us what UNDP is doing, probably in 1 minute, because the time is almost over. Thank you, Heather.
What in particular would you like me to share, Ada?
Whatever you think it's a highlight for in this moment.
Actually, instead of a highlight, I have a question for you, Ada. How does it work for you and UNICEF collaborating between the evaluation office and then your country offices when you're providing the support at country level? Because if I'm quite frank, in UNDP, one of the challenges we face as the evaluation office is that we're sometimes a bit disconnected from our program colleagues at the country level, who would be the ones providing that ongoing in-country support. We kind of pop in, we do the NEC conferences every 2 years, we have a few other initiatives, but to be honest, we're a little disconnected from the country sometimes. How does that work in UNICEF?
Yeah, it works differently, but it's different in every region. So for example, in Africa, the conditions are, the foundations are there because more work has been done there. There are organizations working there. So our regional offices there have regional strategies, and they have embedded one stream of the regional strategy is national evaluation capacity development. In Asia as well, but more, it works more in some countries of Asia where that are very much advanced with support of UNICEF. Philippines developed its national strategy. Now it's embedding evaluation in the Senate. Sri Lanka is an example of going really far. Vietnam has also done some interesting activities. But so those are regional activities that the evaluation office supports. But we have also global activities. And the ones I was referring to were global activities. Now, when I talk about supporting the country-led evaluation of SDGs, sometimes we get a tripartite agreement, so the country, the region, and the evaluation office, because we think it's strategic enough to get involvement at 3 levels. And in some cases, for example, in the evaluation we are supporting in Peru, is just a partnership with UNESCO that the evaluation office is supporting because we don't have the capacity there. The country office is participating, but it's not participating in providing a strategic guidance. So it depends. And we have also a question. About how can we go beyond monitoring. Storm monitoring is a precondition for building evaluation systems, but not easy to breach. I agree, Zlata, it's not easy to breach. However, I would say that in these turbulent times, and perhaps always for evaluation, a linear approach has never worked that well. If the conditions are there for a linear approach, we go for that. But if we go in a very linear approach, then we will be saying, well, Nigeria should have done an availability first, we have linked with monitoring first, Peru as well. I think that, of course, it's important, and we build on evidence, and we try to connect, but we not put necessarily as it's an ideal precondition, but sometimes we want to apply real-world evaluation methods. That means surpassing constraints that we do. We need now to leave the breakout room, but there will be possibility of still asking questions in the plenary. So thank you so much. The time was short, but hopefully this was useful, at least to initiate the discussion.
Nata indicated, my name is Patricia Vidal. I work in the evaluation office of the ILO as evaluation officer, and I've been engaged in national evaluation capacity development initiatives for the ILO and previously as well regarding mostly recently the SDGs, right? How to conduct evaluations in the SDG context. So this is a World Cafe session. As Renata indicated at the beginning, the most important aspect that we would also like to get with you from this session is to get engaged into a discussion. So you've been listening a lot to us by now, already 40 minutes into the EPE session. So I would like to take not much than 5 to 7 minutes to present a snapshot of what ILO as another UNEG evaluation office has been working on in terms of national evaluation capacity development. And then I would like to engage us all into a discussion and a debate on the opportunities that are ahead of us when it comes to national evaluation capacity and the SDGs. Just a little bit of an overview of what I would like to touch upon with you today. I'm going to present, as I said, a snapshot of what are the main activities that we do in terms of national evaluation capacity development, particularly focusing on our latest and most well, we already had 6 iterations of this training program, which is the ILO training package for the ILO constituents on evaluation and the SDGs. You will hear me referring to these constituents. This term is, well, as you know, ILO is a tripartite agency. So meaning that our primary stakeholders at national level are our constituents, which are government, group representative, employer representatives, and workers organization representatives. So we try to target our activities to the three groups at the same time. And our training initiatives as well do target these three groups at the same time. And as you will see, this is very enriching in terms of discussion and debates when it comes to evaluation in the context of the SDG. From that experience, I would like to share with you 5 lessons learned that we've gained so far in working with our constituents on strengthening their capacities on evaluation, as well as what are our next steps, particularly as we've been indicating since the beginning in the context of the pandemic scenario. What are we as an agency doing in terms of national evaluation capacity development? So national evaluation capacity strengthening hasn't been a plus or an extra to ILO evaluation office, but has been embedded very much in our theory of change, in our policy, as well as in our strategy. Since 2011, we've been working on strengthening the capacities of both our internal staff as well as national stakeholders. So 3 groups, as I said, of constituents for the ILO. And we have been doing that mostly on evaluation, but also in terms of design and monitoring elements that are relevant to evaluation. So we have combined that type of training. The most important aspect is that because it is so embedded into our own strategy and policy, our training curricula or portfolio was subject to the independent evaluation of the evaluation function that took place in 2016. And there was a specific recommendation that came out from that evaluation, independent evaluation. And it was actually to update the training program in order to make it better responsive to new development cooperation concerns. And so what happened is that we had originally back in 2012 up until 2016 a training program which was focusing only on evaluation. So basically we were engaging with the stakeholders at country level on how to conduct the evaluation, how to basically engage with stakeholders that are important to you, but I mean, in the context of your own evaluation. And what we did in 2017 actually was to revamp it in order to broaden the scope a little bit. And it was not only on how to conduct evaluation, but how to link evaluation to other, as I said, development cooperation concerns. So the UN reform, the SDGs, or the UNDAF, UN reform, and SDGs, right? So I think, and by doing that, what happened is that we broaden up as well the scope to talking about national development plans, about design, engaging in those processes. So it was very much after the endorsement of the 2030 agenda, which very much an exercise of working together with them as well in order to imagine the 3 constituents groups. It was also an exercise that helped us to touch upon other areas relevant to evaluation and to evaluability. So that revision, just very briefly, that revision wasn't a top-down approach at all. We engaged with them in a survey. So we conducted a survey amongst all our constituents in order to identify their their capacity needs and gaps, right? In order to better understand a little bit what Robert Leahy was just referring, assessing their needs. So we did that, and actually the whole portfolio, the whole curriculum of the training program very much responds to what we got from them as inputs into how to, or what they needed to know, or the capacity that they consider necessary to grasp from this training program. So as I said, we have conducted these training programs already 6 times. So we have 6 iterations of the training program across regions in different countries. And from that experience, we have extracted some lessons learned. As good evaluators, we have reviewed it. And so we've been able to identify 5 lessons learned that I would like to share with you. The first 2 are very much connected, and is something that I was referring to before, is the fact that national evaluation capacity development on SDGs is not only important to talk about elements relevant to the evaluation, but also to link it to design issues and monitoring issues. So we saw that while we were conducting those trainings, it is very easy. It comes out naturally to refer to also aspects that they need to start considering when designing, when developing monitoring frameworks. And so that, of course, enriched a lot the discussion, because it wasn't just referring to evaluation in isolation, but also tying it up to other areas of the relevant to reporting in the voluntary national reviews. And that links to the second lesson learned, right? And is that these training programs, even if it's just, as I said, our training program is strengthening the capacities, or sorry, evaluating the decent work agenda in the SDG era. So that is very much scoped, but nonetheless, it allows you to link to national development plans, to discussions on voluntary national reviews, how to engage them, or how to engage constituents in not only the design, the monitoring of those national development plans. So that in itself, imagine with the government, employers and workers sitting in the same room, allows you to have a considerable level of, or high level discussions that otherwise sometimes is difficult with the social partners, as we all know. The third lesson learned is also a characteristic of this training program, and is that when we were developing the curriculum, at the same time we were working on developing an availability diagnostic instrument for our country programming framework. And so one of the characteristics of this availability tool is that it not only it doesn't look only at the internal capacities of the ILO to report to or to link our programming with UNDAF or UNSDCF now and the SDG, but also this availability tool looks at the capacities of our constituents to engage with ILO and to engage at country level in areas concerning to SDGs, voluntary national review and reporting. And so what happened is that we started to implement these 2 components, so the training and the availability at the same time. And what happened is that from the availability, we were getting very substantive information on where to conduct also those trainings. So in a way, we can wait for them, for constituents, national stakeholders to request us to have this training program, but we can also proactively look into these opportunities through the availability assessment. And we have one specific example in a country in Latin America where, because they use the availability in the context of designing the country programming framework, they're already including an outcome on strengthening capacities on many topics, but including also evaluation in the context, monitoring and evaluation in the context of SDGs and development cooperation concerns. So that's, I think, a lesson learned worth mentioning in this workshop. The first element is something that also Robert mentioned, and is that there is no one size fits all in this type of training. It requires, I mean, we know the basics of this training, right? There are certain pillars that we know we need to cover in terms of design, monitoring, evaluation, but it requires a lot of preparation if we want this to be sustainable, in the sense that we know that SDGs at country level there is a wide range of scenarios. Countries have advanced a lot. Constituents and national stakeholders are very much engaged in some countries. So we really need to be to do a lot of research beforehand in order to find specific examples as to how to work with them during that workshop to optimize that experience, and to already start mentoring, if I may use the word that Robert Lahey used, start mentoring and working with them on how to optimize the progress that they have already achieved into converting into full engagement of national stakeholders in for instance, national or voluntary national reviews. And the last lesson learned links with our next steps, and is that we in the ILO also work, I mean, we are a small evaluation outfit, and we know that there are technical departments out there in the ILO working also on training programs with constituents. So we have teamed up with them in order to be able to insert modules on evaluation on their existing training program, same as with what we do with the International Training Center of the ILO in Turin, which has a vast array of training programs. And we have also cooperating, and we want to continue cooperating with them. So that links with the next steps. We are we are converting the training program into an online one in the current circumstances. This is what we see as the future, and links with the question that Oscar Garcia made in the chat before, and is that, well, I mean, now, at least for ILO, everything is readjusting, we are repurposing, but we know, and the request exists from constituents to continue being engaged in this training program, specifically on evaluation. And then, of course, continuing teaming up with our technical departments, other regional outfits, as well as training institutions. I am aware of time, but we still have 5 minutes together. So I would like to now give the floor to you and discuss about, okay, so, I mean, there are opportunities, as Renata mentioned, there are opportunities ahead of us. So how do you see, or what do you see could be the role of UNEG played in the context of national evaluation capacity development in the current pandemic scenario or beyond? How do you see UNEG's role in this case? Thank you.
Patricia, this is Juan Carlos Peña. I don't see the hand button, so I don't know whether I should.
Yeah, please.
Right, but let me just have a reflection more than a concrete suggestion. And this was basically based on one of your comments regarding partnerships. I mean, it seems to me that perhaps engaging in a more strategic approach would probably be the best way of doing this. I know, for example, when you mentioned Latin America, but I've evaluated a number of regional commissions, and in my experience, for example, in Latin America, there is a whole division within ECLAC, the Economic Commission for Latin America, dealing with strategic planning, monitoring, and evaluation. In other words, providing support to member states in enhancing their strategic national development plans, embedding and including SDGs into them, providing capacity development on monitoring and reporting issues, including evaluation. So I'm wondering whether, perhaps engaging, as a UN entity, as a UN as a whole, engaging in a more strategic rather than an ad hoc approach to sort of like doing these things. I know for a fact also that also within ECA, the Economic Commission for Africa, they do a similar type of support through another institute for training that is also within the organizational structure. ESCWA has just recently developed also a unit that is reporting directly to the executive secretary, precisely on this point, and that is to enhance the capacities of member states in including the SDGs into the national development planning. And this is all done, in cooperation with UNDP and, more recently now with the resident coordinator system. So again, through those mechanisms that are already established, perhaps we can try to see how UNEG can provide further support on those efforts and then move forward in these regards. But I would just sort of like, just that reflection, in other words, try to do and sort of like pull our efforts together to engage in a more strategic approach rather than do it in a ad hoc manner. So it's more like a comment and a reflection more than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. And I fully agree. I think that it is, of course, every agency tries to add their input, right, or their contribution, but as such, UNEG, through, as you said, strategic approaches. And I think this is something that we are now currently developing the work plan for the working group. national evaluation capacity. And this is something that I think we could certainly consider and present as a proposal to the executive committee. So thank you for that. Yes, Renata indicates that we still have 2 minutes before we rotate. So any other inputs, ideas as to how do you think UNEG, and of course these are proposals that we could include in the work plan. So how do you think UNEG should contribute? I see Aurelie, you've raised your hand, please.
Hello, Patricia. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation as well. Just a very quick question, which is a reflection we're having at NFO in relation to this type of question. Given the context, we are much more reliant, obviously, on national capacities, and especially being a technical agency, we need capacity at the sectoral level. And that's a challenge because most of the capacity is actually much more at the central, sort of more the statistics and prime minister kind of areas. And so the way that we have thought of trying to boost capacities in a way that can also serve our evaluation capacity in the field in this kind of context is by trying to engage with research institutions, universities, trying to see if we can do LOAs or whatever standing agreements to be able to, let's say, think about how we can collaborate and somehow the collaboration should be a win-win situation because there's a learning by doing on both sides by doing this. But so basically having an agreement ahead of time for any collaboration on a given evaluation to be facilitated. So I'd be very curious to know if others have had this kind of experience because we're only starting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Aurelie. In the ILO, we tried to pilot that. And actually, we work with a training institution in Argentina. Because, I mean, again, it was important for us to partner with already existing technical departments with training programs in the sector. I mean, and referring to the sectorial level. That's why I'm linking that to this. And at national level, we try to work with training institutions, not only because of, the sectorial aspect, but also to sustain this training program, right? I mean, a little bit train of trainers approach, and then take off with the training initiatives at country level. We did it. We don't know yet. It's too soon with COVID now, especially worse to see the results of that. But certainly something that in ALO we're also working. I don't know whether other colleagues in this petit comité also had the same experience. But thank you for that, Aurelie.
Okay. The idea is I would like to try. We do NEC development in the independent evaluation section. The second, why we Morocco for the pilot. Briefly, the activities we have been carrying out on NEC development. And finally, some lessons learned and the possible way forward that we are considering at this moment. So, well, the reason why we do NEC development and taking into account that command is to ensure evaluations are carried out and utilized in UNEDC, and technical assistance to member states is not at the core mandate of the independent evaluation section, is that NEC development is an important enabler for achieving the SDGs, and that for this reason there is this General Assembly resolution calling for UN entities to support country-led efforts for building evaluation capacity. So UNEDC is active in 7 SDGs, and the message that we are conveying internally to build support for NEC and for the rationale for doing NEC is that our ultimate goal would be to engage with member states for increasing their capacity to evaluate their efforts to countering drugs, crime, and terrorism. This is not easy, not just because of the usual challenges for developing evaluation capacity, but also because UNEDC's evaluation presence in the field is very limited. We are limited number of staff, and we are based in Vienna. So given our limited resources, we focused on one pilot activity and we targeted Morocco. Now, why Morocco? Well, first of all, because it's an important country for the mandates of UNODC for many areas like human trafficking, criminal justice, or drug trafficking. It's an important partner. Second is because it's very strategic from the point of view of evaluation. We identified in the first baseline study on NEC in 2015 that this had a country had a formalized evaluation, but at the same time evolving evaluation system. So we thought it was an opportunity to build to ongoing efforts, but that had space for development. And the most notably, what was very interesting is that Morocco institutionalized the evaluation institutional mandate in 2011. They established the mandate of public entities to evaluate and to be accountable to the parliament of the evaluation results. The way we did this was basically by engaging first with the permanent mission of Morocco in Vienna and asking them to please put us in contact with the authorities in the line with might be interested in evaluation. Then we did some scouting missions. We went to Morocco, and in fact, by working closely with the UN country team, we identified a different key partner there. The institutional partner we got was a national observatory of human development that is really a champion for evaluation in Morocco because they have the mandate to promote resource-based management and the evaluation and monitoring in all human development related areas. And here what we ask them is, we try to figure out together with the UN country team and ONDH how to put this in a way that we would add to the efforts that were already ongoing there. So we joined a joint program that this National Observatory has with the UN in Morocco, and added one line for national evaluation capacity development on that joint program that was going to be developed with the University Moulay Ismail of Meknes. The University Moulay Ismail of Meknes is a particularly interesting partner there because they are delivering, and they were designing at that moment, and now they are delivering the first master's program in public policy evaluation in Morocco, and it is showing the way for other universities to do this. Well, this is an overview of the activities, but I will skip it for the sake of brevity. The first, one of the coding activities we did, we supported the regional evaluation network, Francophone Evaluation Network. We presented the case of one developmental evaluation practice that we did in Colombia, and this is the way we contacted with ONDH here.
Carlos, your connection is not very good.
Here we have the chief of evaluation of UNODC with we identified the master's program that was under development, and we added to it by designing a module that was demanded by them on undertaking evaluation based on best international practices or our experience in UNODC. Next, what we did was to bring some students to Vienna, a selected group, to show them what we do in practice. So they came for 4 days, and they were they met with us. They also had the opportunity to speak with colleagues from other UN evaluation functions, from UNIDO and the Atomic Agency. They also had some career development session with HR of UNEDC, and participated in side events of the CCPCG, that is a most important event on criminal justice that was at the same time being delivered in UNODC. We also advised them on their thesis projects. We had some evaluators from IES who took a look at their dissertation projects and gave them some advice about how to improve them. And this is one of the photo groups we did. We were all very happy. It was really a very rewarding experience. And presented this partnership at the last NEC conference in Egypt. We also had brought one of the students who presented his experience at the conference. Finally, we did an assessment, an internal assessment for our learning purposes. And basically, the counterparts and beneficiaries were happy with this initiative. From the point of view of students, it was really very interesting to see how evaluation is carried out in practice and how it is at the international level. Particularly those who were who came to Vienna, it was very nice to see from them that they expressed that seeing what we do encourage them to, or reaffirm their decision to build a career on evaluation. From the point of view of our stakeholders in Morocco, they value different things. Like from the view of the university, it was to have to add an international dimension to the master's program. This was not only about the actual contents or that we could add, but they said that for them they believe it would increase the demand for the master's program among the students, and actually it increased the second year. As for the National Observatory, what they liked is that our support to this university was very much aligned with their intent to promote the professionalization of evaluation in Morocco. And since this evaluation, they had the expectation that this would have a demonstration effect with other universities. We also had a number of lessons because it was really an activity that we were learning on the way as we did it. First message that I would like to convey is that we saw that contributing to NEC development at the country level is possible, even for a small evaluation function like IAS that has no field presence. So this is something that is actually possible, which we didn't know at first how much feasible it could be. Second, it is paramount to build support and trust. Internal, so that we do not see that we are there for our core market. We need to accept evaluation capacity development is important for achieving the mandate of our own, but also with member states. It was essential to build a trust relation with the permanent mission so that we could work with partners in Morocco, and also with our partners in Morocco. It's for this reason a high investment activity. It takes a lot of time, and also because of it's a learning process. And for this reason, it's very important to be strategic and remain focused. There are many NEC activities that are interesting, and really we have extremely limited time to do. For this reason, it was great from the moment that we could identify this partner to do this specific activity with the master's program. We also see the great value added of joining existing mechanisms at the country level, this joining program that we joined. But one lesson we would like to share is that we found difficult and cumbersome administrative processes beyond what we expected. This was really, it took very, very long time to get approved our participation in the joint program. Also because we are not that much of experience at UNODC from headquarters. But also the continuation of the joint program in the end had to be suspended because it was difficult because of an administrative bottleneck that became difficult. We hope that these mechanisms of engagement get improved. Basically, the engaging with all other UN entities was exactly following the very similar administrative processes that hiring external providers for other types of things. But all in all, this was has been a learning by doing process, and we are very happy to continue learning. Now, what the possible way forward that we are thinking about, and this is at the very design stage, is to keep one very focused activity with our team in Morocco, not bringing, because that was a lot of involved a lot of administrative process, but to have some type of webinar for students of the university partners in Morocco, and at the same time move our focus not from providing services or NEC support directly in the field, but by engaging with other UN entities with a stronger presence there and adapt to the efforts. So I would like to end up with a question about, I'm very happy to answer your questions about our our pilot activity. And I would like to know also about your thoughts about possible common engagement activities for supporting country-led efforts to make that we could join forces. But thank you very much. And now stop sharing and see the chat. Okay, I see there are some comments in the chat. Hello, any reactions? Anyone would like to comment something? Let's see much movement in the chat. What I could share in the meantime is that we did some follow-up of this, and from the 20 students of the masters, in the first cohort, 10 of them graduated. The others are still finalizing their master's thesis. We haven't heard any experiences yet of graduates who have actually started to work as evaluators, but this is because, in part, it's because this master's program aims at is targeting those who are who want to pursue a career at the public administration. So what they are mainly doing is to prepare their public examination to become public servants in Morocco.
Sorry, Carlos. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes?
I see that Maria has raised her hand, and also Relly. I don't know if
Oh,
it's...
yes, please.
Yes.
And also, really, please, Maria, could you please...
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks, Renata, for keeping an eye on the Zoom capabilities. Thanks so much. I found the discussion fascinating, especially the part on having exactly the thing that you mentioned now, this master's program on evaluation. I see it as a longer term investment, which is also why I like it, because you helped maybe create a generation of national evaluators in a country. So how difficult was it to set up this program, and particularly on curriculum design? Where did the expertise come from? Asking, of course, from a country office perspective, because I work for UNICEF in Montenegro, and building national evaluation capacity is the dream, but we also, I mean, we have at least at the country level, we have different obstacles such as shrinking resources, even before, but now more so due to COVID. Of course, transitions in the government that happen with elections, and this interest in evaluations is maybe nascent. So maybe something on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Aurélie, could you please, would you like also to share your question?
Actually, I think my, I don't know if we have time because it says 45 seconds. Please
Yes.
respond to the question, because then you won't have time otherwise.
Thank you. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Then very briefly, it was difficult, but the master's program was already being designed by our Moroccan counterparts of the university. What we did is to identify one area where we could add to their design, and they wanted to have one module on practices at the international level on evaluation, and that's what we did. And then it was difficult because they wanted to have some type of focus on evaluation at the territorial level. We did so, but it was not a area of expertise. But they were very happy because they wanted this international dimension.
A snapshot of what the points raised during the discussion. Shall I start with Patricia?
Yes, thank you, Renata. So I really want to thank the colleagues that were in the rooms that I attended. I think it was room 3 and room 1. We had the opportunity to discuss a little bit. So after the presentation that I made on the ILO's activities, I asked them a question as to what they saw, what they consider should be the role of UNEG in the context of national evaluation capacity development, and of course, in the context of the SDGs and the current pandemic. So there were good inputs that we could certainly consider for our work plan. So there were some indicating that there is a need for a strategic approach, in the sense that there are already outfits that are in charge of working or developing, working on the planning, monitoring in a strategic manner, right? It is at a strategic level, and perhaps UNEG could be working with those outfits in order to conduct national evaluation capacity development at that level, right? So I think that was a good input in order to engage and have partnerships with these strategic entities. There was also other inputs related to the fact that, yes, we very much focus on evaluation, but we also need to build capacities at a sectorial level, because these stakeholders are very much then engaging in the evaluations, not only of our agencies, but also at the level of the voluntary national review. So perhaps working with the research institution or training centers at country level could be also an important aspect to consider. And then, of course, very good input from a colleague who said, well, yes, we are at COVID times, we cannot travel, but let's not forget that through the country-led evaluations, we can also continue building capacities. And it's true, I mean, each of us as evaluator, we have a role to build capacities when we work, when we conduct interviews, when we work with national stakeholders at country level through our evaluation processes. And then other inputs related to the fact that, of course, partnerships, right? That we are evaluation outfits that we have good contributions, but it has to be at some point a joint initiatives between UN agencies. So I thank you again for the colleagues, and I think that that was a very, very enriching discussion and contributions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I see on my screen and Ada next to me, so I call Ada.
Thank you very much, Renata. It has been a very interesting, but as usual, time is our first enemy. But first, let me highlight what the main emphasis of the key main messages were. It's the important to first realize that the challenges that are posed by the 2030 agenda and the COVID times are also opportunities for us to rethink evaluation, to demonstrate that evaluation can evolve and adapt, that evaluation is needed in the process of supporting countries to accelerate the SDGs, and that therefore evaluation is paramount. One other message was that it's not that evaluation is complex nowadays, that evaluation has always been complex, and probably the nuances of the complexity vary, but it has always been complex, and probably that is the beauty and the excitement of the profession and the function we have chose to work in or for. The other important message is that we should not depart from the assumption that countries are busy with their priorities vis-a-vis COVID, therefore there is no time for evaluation. My experience working closely with the field tells that might be the case for some, but not for many others. So we have to be careful and to ask the question whether we are departing from assumptions that are ours, very technical or technocratic assumptions that may not hold true when we go to the field. One of the demonstrations of that a country-led evaluation of the SDG 4 in Peru has started in COVID times, and that is being supported by UNICEF and UNESCO. It's also important to go beyond technical discourses, to stop having evaluation talking to evaluators, and it's important to embed in political dialogues, address the political dimensions of evaluations, and realize that evaluations of the SDGs, country-led evaluations, are national evaluation systems, are political decisions with technical implications, but not the other way around. Questions from participants were more around how to articulate a global with regional and national efforts, where to concentrate trainings nowadays, how trainings are different now from before. There it was emphasized that the training is now more, before it was more on outcome, impact, evaluation methods, etc. Now it's more having more emphasis with governments and other stakeholders on rapid evaluations, evaluative workshops, and synthesis. There was also one experience shared, but and also what is the challenges in linking monitoring and evaluation. The challenges have always been there, but probably a linear approach is not the best to go. And it's also important to mention that a colleague from UN Women shared an experience where they are working currently, in this time, they're working with the government to embed gender in their evaluation policy. So that was it, Renata. Thank you so much.
Last but not least, Carlos, can you unmute yourself? Thanks for sharing.
You are muted, Carlos.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I would like to thank all the colleagues who participated in the room sessions. We had a brief discussion, but there was I believe, an interesting exchange about experiences for supporting master's programs in evaluation in by different entities, based on the experience we shared in Morocco. Interest on the specifics about what, how can we actually contribute from the UN to the development of these programs and to the curriculum, what is the added value that and how we make it tangible and actually used. Also the messages that I think that were more fact is that national evaluation capacity development is a long-term investment. It's a learning by doing process. It's highly intensive in terms of attention and time. We need to be strategic, and also the importance of joining forces to try to work together to make activities that are useful to our institutional partners in member states, and also that can be built, that we can raise support for among member states in our offices for this type of activity, for also for fundraising purposes and for institutional support. It was very interesting, actually. Well, thank you very much to all.
Thank you, Carlos, Ada, and Patricia, and all participants. We have very little time, so if there is some questions for all our presenters or a comment, please go ahead and take advantage of 2 minutes before we close this session. Very interesting and very rich, I think. I see something on the chat. Do you know, by Mirella Hernani, do you know of any discussion related to the connection between NECD related to the SDGs and recently discussed the system-wide evaluation office in case there is any? I have not seen this topic in the preliminary note raised to the system-wide evaluation office as part of the UN reform. Does anyone of you know, Ada, Patricia, or Carlos, do you have an answer to this?
I am aware that the system-wide evaluation office is putting together a multi-stakeholder group. I recently connected them with AFREA, APE, and other stakeholders, preparing a reference group to start undertaking a system, the system-wide evaluation. It's still very preliminary, and no concept note or any other document has been shared. And with relation to national evaluation capacity development, specifically from that front, I think we have to wait a little bit, because actually the office is just made of one person, that it's an officer in charge, who is Varghese. The competition has not been advertised yet, but we have to wait.
Okay, I think we have exhausted our time. I want to just retain one message that came into the group and also in the plenary, that joining forces and working together as UNEG is very important. We saw specific initiatives of our colleagues and others that were also participating in the session, but I think there's much more scope for UNEG to come into this, play more strongly in national evaluation capacities and take advantage of those who have already moved in this direction, or those agencies, like both the lessons and the challenges they have had. And yes, and this, I think it's very important for UNEG to go ahead with. So thank you very much. And I think he will have, as any other EPE session, there is a quick survey. It's posted in the chat. Thomas has posted the link. Please take a few moments just to give us feedback on this session. And thank you very much again to all participants for staying 1.5 hours. Is a long time, but there was so much to discuss, and I really thank everybody for their inputs. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget the survey, please. Thank you.
Please, the link is in the chat. Bye-bye.
Bye.